Welcome to God's Principles for Healthy Relationships. This is Season 2. My name is Debbie Raj and I'm here with my husband Martin. And today's topic is one that can be very huge nowadays and very difficult to understand. But we're going to try to delve a little bit into understanding narcissistic behavior.
Yeah. Recently, in the past few years, we have been hearing about narcissistic behaviors. He is a narcissist, she is a narcissist, and there is always this term floating around. And also it is sad to hear some people say narcissistic behaviors cannot be changed because they become into a monster and so on. But in simple terms, what does narcissistic behavior or narcissism mean? It basically means self-centeredness. Very simple. Nothing more than that, nothing less than that. But we do love to have fancy terms that will make us to feel big or complicated and all those things. But the simple term or simple way to explain it is self-centeredness. And in the Bible, we have a beautiful verse that is taken from Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. It says, "But lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than themselves." Let each esteem others better than themselves. So, can narcissism be fixed? Absolutely. The moment we say we cannot fix narcissism, narcissistic people cannot be changed, then we are saying that God is not able to do all things. And we do have a verse that says, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." That becomes a lie. So, God has all the power. We just need to cooperate with Him. We just need to work with Him. If we believe God has the power, and if we want God to work on that narcissistic behavior, God will help us to come out of it. Now, we also want to know that we all have narcissistic behavior to an extent. Maybe not as pronounced as other people. We are all selfish in some way. We are all self-centered in some way. The levels might differ, but we all are in one way or the other narcissistic. That is why it is important for us to recognize and realize that God's power can help us to come out of that rapturous behavior.
Because of sin, so many things have entered into this world and ruined healthy relationships, and that's one aspect. And through the years, different behaviors get names. But the issue that we see as we work with different people, that if we put labels of that's who we are and we cannot change, and this happens with so many things.
Absolutely.
Like I have this borderline disorder, or
bipolar.
or I'm a depressive person, I have depression, period. Yes, there are things that are more complex, and patterns that are not helped in the right way can become things that are hard to change and fixed. But does God have the power to help us? Are there ways that we can find a better way? And what does the Bible say about these things? Because God doesn't put us in boxes that is unchangeable. If you have this issue, there's nothing I can do. But if we keep doing our own way and we don't come to God and allow Him to do the work, yes, He won't force us. And if we stick to self-centeredness, pride, selfishness, which are the root of narcissistic behaviors, then God cannot break in if we don't allow Him to. So it's very important to understand that narcissism is not confidence, even though it can be seen like it, because it's a cover for many times insecurities or even childhood trauma. So narcissism, it's a cover for insecurities. And the more this social media age has developed, the more it's creating and basically developing narcissistic behavior in people. So why is that? There's more insecurity in young people. There's more desire to show a cover of who we really are and show like it's perfect and who can have the best and the comparison and all of these things that impact. So it is developing more narcissistic behavior in people with that behavior. So research and studies show that narcissistic traits can develop from both overpraise and neglect in early life. So just imagine how many people can be plagued with this insecurity, childhood trauma, overpraise or neglect, and then develop this covers, this desire to be controlling of others, this desire to be self-centered, to feel better, and that is not how God created us to be.
So another trait or traits that we can see of a narcissistic behavior is taken from the Bible, actually. One of the characters, I really appreciate him, but also he has showed how narcissism can be, how great of a narcissistic behavior one person can have. And that is none other than Nebuchadnezzar. This is taken from the book of Daniel. Number one, his traits he showed, number one is grandiosity. Number two is control and intimidation. Number three, self-glorification. How did he show all these things? Let's see. Daniel chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. He showed grandiosity. After listening to the interpretation that Daniel gave him about the statue, it was supposed to be gold, silver, bronze, and so on and so forth. But he wanted to prove that he is the only one that is going to be forever, so to speak, right? And in this chapter 3, verses 1 through 6, we see that he built a whole image only out of gold. There was no silver, there was no bronze and iron, none of that, because he wanted to prove that he is the only one. There is going to be no one after him.
It became all about him.
All about him, self-absorbed, self-centered. And number two, control and intimidation. We see that he wanted to get all the glory, and when the trumpets were sounding, everyone had to fall and worship the image. That image represented him. And when these three young boys did not budge for it, they did not want to worship him, they did not for a second even tie their shoelace, they didn't bend, he got really upset and he threatened to throw them in the fire, right? And that they had to worship the image that he has created. Control and intimidation. The first one was grandiosity, second one is control and intimidation. Number three is self-glorification. Daniel chapter 4, verse 30. This is something that was really interesting when I first started reading the book of Daniel. He boasts, right? Nebuchadnezzar boasts that, is not this the great Babylon I have built by my might, by my power, and for the glory of my majesty. So it was all about him, self-centered, self-absorbed, and self-glorification. So those three aspects he really showed. And it might be huge in a way, but also many people many people actually show those signs, those traits in their lives as well.
Something interesting is right now we were going through this traits from this king is that many times in people that are developing this narcissistic behaviors and just feeding on others, praise and just controlling others, the grandiosity aspect and the self-glorification can be hidden as a way of, so it's like a covered, right, narcissist. It's not necessarily so out there. It can be a little hidden in like humility. Or if someone says, wow, you've done this so great, oh no, that's nothing. And then it's kind of minimized. It's like trying to show that there's humility. So you don't really grasp the grandiosity part, but you can see the control and intimidation more surfacing. And so when we're interacting with other people or we are observing ourselves, asking God, search my heart and see if there's any wicked way, show me that selfishness, that pride that is making me want to control or be the center of attention. And so just for us to know that sometimes those can be hidden in ourselves or in others, and we need to pay attention to all of them. But the turning point in the king's life, it's when in Daniel 4:31, God humbles the king by allowing him to basically lose his sanity. He becomes like a beast. He's like eating grass and just growing his hair, his nails, everything is like just he's abandoned and like a beast in the wild. So from a king that was all about him, God makes him lose his sanity so that he can see exactly where the power comes from and get rid of this toxic behavior that destroys us if we don't recognize it.
Mm-hmm. And the next one is transformation. Of course, the narcissistic traits he was showing, and then God helps him actually to have a turning point, right? And now we see the whole transformation happen. It's a very huge contrast from how he was to how he became. In Daniel chapter 4, verse 37, he is confessing in his own mouth, with his own mouth, saying, "Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all of whose works are truth and his ways justice. And those who walk in pride, he is able to put down." So here he is also talking about his own experience. He's talking about the transformation that he had with God, what God can do. He's talking about the power that God has. And then he also talks about how God can change people's pride. So can God really work with narcissistic people and change them? Absolutely. Will God need to bring them to a point where they have to eat grass? God can definitely bring them to a point so that it will be a benefit for them. They can have a transformation. So narcissism, we want to make sure that people don't see it as something that cannot be worked on. It can be worked on. God has all the power in the universe. The only problem is that people are not willing to make the change. When people are willing to make the change, God will make the change. He can give that turning point. He can give the transformation. In Nebuchadnezzar's life, he had to bring him down. Even though maybe Nebuchadnezzar was not at a point where he wanted to surrender, but God made it happen. He knew what need to be touched so that he can completely have a 180, so that he can live a very different life that is centered with God. And that has happened. And now, if you're someone that is going through something like this, ask God, God, am I doing something wrong? Am I narcissistic? Are there attributes that shows that I'm a narcissistic person? Search my heart, know my heart, and show me what are the weaknesses I have, and He will show you. And you might have the same experience, not necessarily you have to go through like him eating grass, but you might have the same transformational experience as did Nebuchadnezzar.
And it's so beautiful to know that God is willing to show us the blind spot, those areas that we might not even realize. We might be pointing fingers and looking at others' problems, and God is like, hey, you have a big problem to work on. And that is valuable to know that He wants to not only show us, but also help us be transformed. And He doesn't want us to be lost, because if we hold on to pride, to selfishness, yes, we will be lost because we won't allow God to work in us. And it's important to understand that real love lifts both people. So when there's narcissistic behavior, generally one is in control and the other one is more the submissive person. And yes, in relationships normally that can happen, but it is important to recognize that we should lift each other up and not put someone down or control another person, or neither the wife try to control the husband or the husband control the wife, but be more of a partnership, be more of a way that, like Ephesians says, wives are to respect the husband, but the husband is to love the wife, and we should treat each other like valuable and not like less. But this can apply to any relationship that we might be interacting with, and realize that there is more that tendency. And when we are more codependent, we will tend to fall into those that are more controlling, because kind of those dysfunctionalities feed on each other. One wants security by control, another one wants security by someone else that values them and kind of controls them. So then it creates this dysfunctional dynamic in relationships. And so it's very, very important to recognize, okay, am I maybe codependent? That I'm allowing someone to tell me what to do all the time, not think for myself, and really feeling that my worth depends on that person's love instead of having it in God, so that I can set my boundaries, so that I can be independent from this codependency. We need each other, so we are in a way interdependent, but we shouldn't be codependent, that we cannot live our lives without someone else. Because narcissistic behavior tends to erase that freedom, that dependence. They don't like it. And if you've ever faced a narcissistic relationship, you will know those patterns, that feeling of like guilt if you do something different, fear, or the need to please and just go along. If not, there's anger. Like it said, if there's no control, there will be intimidation. If you don't do this, then, guilt trip, manipulation, or even anger thrown at you. And many, many families, many relationships have these dynamics. So God wants to heal our relationships, heal our way of seeing things, so that we don't have to follow in this selfish and self-destructive behaviors. So Christ's model as a servant leader is so beautiful, because he helps us to see how this works. He was there to control. He was there to uplift, to encourage. And that's how we should be with each other.
And I really love that part where Christ modeled servant-hearted leadership, because he had all the power, but he used it to serve. He did not use it to show how much powerful he is. Even when the Roman soldiers came, he could have easily, in a blink, he could have destroyed them. He didn't do that. He could have easily healed a lot of people, millions at a time. He didn't do that. He was modeling how important it is to discern, how important it is to have a servant mindset, how important it is to work with people with a lowliness of heart, thinking others are better than themselves. Paul explains it beautifully in Philippians, right? So just to know that this type of model that Jesus showed to us, it's just amazing. Because, when you work in corporate places or wherever, you get one small promotion and you immediately start showing how powerful you are. You just your attitude changes, you start to show pride, and then you start seeing people that work under you in a very demeaning way. And I used to work in a corporate company, and I know how people tend to change just with one promotion. They are in the lowest level of work, and all they had to do is become a team lead. That's it. Immediately, everything changes about them. They try to show their authority on everyone else that is working below them. But Christ's way of living is totally different from that. He modeled a beautiful servant leader mindset, which removes completely anything that is related to narcissism.
And something else that comes to my mind that I think is important to recognize is that if we maybe have some of those traits, yes, we can ask God to show it to us. Or if we're reading, it's very important to ask ourselves, instead of thinking, oh, they have this issue, is this maybe me? And I remember you were reading specifically the book Safe and Unsafe People, which we like to call it more safe and unsafe behavior, because if we change the behavior, we don't have to be an unsafe person. If we keep the behavior and we don't change it, then we become a dangerous person because we have toxic ways of interacting. But then Martin one day comes, he's like, I'm reading this, like I'm asking myself, do I have any of this? And that's a great question to ask, because if we recognize, like, maybe I have this, or maybe I'm a little like this, maybe I'm a little controlling in this area, that's the moment where God can break us free from those behaviors. And the problem with certain narcissistic people is they don't want to recognize, they don't want to see, they don't want to pray, Lord, show me, and they want to just not work on it, keep going, and be always the perfect, the best. And that doesn't even allow God's Spirit to work in us. So to humble ourselves, to recognize our issues, to say, is that maybe me? We can ask our partner, do I control or do things in certain ways that is unsafe or makes you feel this or that? Do you see any of these traits in me? But then don't get upset if they say yes, because then that's another problem. So just be open to hear, to recognize, and then God can work.
Absolutely. And now we have come to one of our favorite parts, and that is the challenge. This challenge is named as the mirror moment. Each evening for a week, ask, did I listen more than I spoke? A lot of us have that issue. Did I listen more than I spoke? Number 2, did I make room for someone else's story, or did I take over the whole conversation? Number 3, pray for humility and confidence in Christ to mirror His love. And I do want to point out that Debbie very beautifully mentioned that sometimes certain narcissistic behaviors are not so prominent. It's so hidden, it's so subtle, and we just enjoy it and let it marinate in our hearts. Unfortunately, we do that. I'm not saying everyone does it, but many times people do it. The thing is, God is watching you. God knows the heart. So it's important to know if there is something, and something that you need to work on. And also, it's a great thing to ask your friends that are really open and honest with you. Ask them if you are single. But if you have a romantic partner or if you have a spouse, ask them. That will help you to show where you can grow. And Debbie and I have a practice. Every few months, we ask each other, is there one thing that you appreciate about me? And then we ask, is there one thing that you want me to work on? Or are there few things you want me to work on? And it gives us a free space to share. Maybe other times it might be hard for me to share, okay, can you please work on this and can you please work on that? It might be hard. But when it comes from her or when it comes from me, it'll be easy for the other person to share, yes, can you please work on this, this and this? I would really appreciate. Of course, it shouldn't be accusatory, but something that you are sharing. In this context, in this challenge, it's you're asking yourself, right? Did I listen more than I spoke? And did I make room for someone else's story? Now, the second thing also is very tricky. If you're a speaker like me, if you keep talking and talking and talking, sometimes people have the tendency, if I'm not listening to, or if I'm not speaking, I want to listen. So what I do is, I dominate you with asking questions. So what did you do in this year and this year? Or what, basically, whatever it may be, I'm not able to remember questions. But you start asking questions in such a way that they have to answer your questions instead of letting it freely flow. So, number 1, did I listen more than I spoke? Number 2, did I make room for someone else's story? Number 3, pray for humility and confidence in Christ to mirror His love. This is God's Principles for Healthy Relationships. I'm Martin and Debbie. We are saying goodbye right now, and we will see you in another episode.